All right, so let's look at some examples first. I'm going to work some examples on the board. Let's just get the screen in the right place. All right, and a piece of chalk. I'm going to start by choosing a key, and I'm going to get you to help me with that key. Let's choose D flat major. Can anybody who is online now, I don't have anybody in the class live, anybody online now, can you look at your key table and tell me how many flats D flat major has and what those flats are? How many flats and what they are?
There's 5 flats, sir.
Correct. And what are they?
D, E, A, D, G.
Good. Okay, so I write down the key signature. This is a matter of course for you now, and I want you to get used to this. When you are writing chords in 4 parts, you will always have a mainstay just underneath that. Okay, over there with the treble clef and the bass clef, and they're linked by this line here. It shows when there's a line like this, it shows that these 2 staves must be read together. Okay, if they were separate, it would mean you would go to the end of this line and then continue on that line. Okay, so when there's a line like this, it braces the 2 staves together. So when you found the key signature, put the key signature in straight away so that you don't forget about it, okay? All right. And we write D flat, capital letter, and colon, D flat, capital letter, colon. All right. Now I'm going to write out the scale of D flat major, and then I'm going to write each of the triads above them, okay? So here's the scale of D flat. Okay, and now I'll write the triads. And I'm going to label it. All right. So we've written all of our chords out in D flat major, and I've put a grand stave. Okay, I put a grand stave with the treble clef and the bass clef. I've added the key signature, and I've put D flat here and D flat here, so that everything is ready for what we're going to do. Now, let's first start by reminding ourselves which notes can be doubled for which types of chords. So for the primary triads, what are the primary triads? Which triads are primary? The first one is the second primary? First, 4, 5th. Okay, and you can see that I've put them in capital letters here, okay? From yesterday, can you remember which notes are we allowed to double in the primary triads? And the root, yes, the 5th and the root. So if we were dealing with chord 1, we could double that note, or we could double that note. And this is important here. Some of you, when you were doing worksheet 9, doubled this note and you doubled that note, okay? Which means that you'd have 2 of these and 2 of these, but none of the middle note, okay? We don't want that. We just want one of these 2 doubled. Okay, and I'll show you how we do that in a minute. Okay, secondary triads. What can you double in a secondary triad? Well, first, what are the secondary triads? 2, 3, and 6. Yes. What are you allowed to double? 3rd, the middle note. So you're only allowed to double that 3rd. Okay. let's say you were asked to write chord 1 like that. When you see chord 1 like that, what inversion of the chord are we working with? Is it in root, first inversion, or second inversion? When it just looks like that, is it in root position, or first inversion, or second inversion? It's in position because there's no little 6, there's no 6 here or 6/4. Okay, so it's in root position. What does it mean if it's in root position? Which note has to be at the bottom? The bottom note, this root note, needs to be in the bass voice. Remember, we are now working with 4 voices: soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. Which voice part sings the lowest notes? The bass. The bass sings the lowest note. So if we want the chord to be in root position, it needs to have the root note in the bass voice, the lowest voice. Okay? All right. So the first note that we would write out is a D in the bass. Sorry, let me just start that. Okay? There's the D. It's the bass voice. So if you've read your notes, you'll know that when you are writing in 4-part harmony, you disregard all of the rules that we learned about the tails. Okay? The bass voice, always the tail goes down. The tenor voice, the tail always goes up. The alto voice always goes down, and the soprano voice always goes up. All right. So also I want you to notice, do you see that I've written 1 here? There's the chord. And now the note for chord 1 is directly above there. Okay? So all of the notes are now going to come in a line, a vertical line going all the way up here. So they all have to be in line. Okay. So let's double, in this example here, let's double the root note. So we're going to have 2 Ds. Okay. I'm going to put the other D in the alto voice. Okay. So we've got 1 D, 2 Ds. We still need an F and we need an A. I'm going to put the A in the tenor voice and the F in the soprano voice. Notice they're all in a line like that, okay? The bass one goes down, the alto one goes down, the tenor one goes up, the soprano one goes up. Now, we could write this chord in many different ways. We could also write it like this. Okay, here it's still got the bass note, D. And we've doubled the D. There's the D and there's the D. But now the 2 Ds are in bass and tenor rather than in bass and alto. Okay, then I've got F and A in the soprano and alto. I could still do it even another way. This time I'm going to double the A. So we're allowed to double the root note or the 5th note. Okay, so this time I'm going to double the 5th. I'll put an A over here in the tenor, and I'm going to put another A in the soprano and an F in the alto. Now we've got 1 D, 1 F, 2 A's. Okay, the most important thing is that you need to have at least 1 of each of these notes, and then 1 extra of one of the others that you're allowed to use. Okay, let me play these chords for you so you can hear them. Okay, the first one sounds like this. Okay, then the second one sounds like this. Okay, and the third one. See, they all sound basically the same because they are the same chord. We've just made the voices sing different notes. Okay? Does that make sense? Good. Now, let's change this. And let's make it 1/6. Chord 1/6. So we are still dealing with a primary triad, which still means that we can double that note or that note. Okay, so nothing has changed so far. The only thing that changes is that when there's a 6 over here, it tells us that the bass note must be the 3rd. So this note must come at the bottom in the bass voice. All right. So if we do that, if we follow that rule, there, that's an F. So let's write an F here at the bottom. There's the F in the bass voice. Okay, so now we are covered with the right bass note. Now let's double this note here, D. So we can have a D over here in the tenor. And let's put a D at the top for the soprano. And we still need an A. There. We've got 2 Ds, 1 F, 1 A. But the F is in the bass voice because this indicates over here, this little 6, that we're in first inversion. Any questions so far? Okay. Now, if I played those 3 chords that we had before that were written up, this is what they would sound like. Okay, those were the 3 chords that I'd written out. Now, listen to the chord. There's the bass note, but we were on the bass note there. For the root position, that's the bass. For the first inversion, so it sounds a little bit different, doesn't it? Okay. So that's why it's so important to indicate exactly what we're doing. Okay. Now let's look at 1/6/4. What does 1/6/4 tell us? Second inversion. And what does that mean? Which note will need to be in the bass voice? This note over here, A. All right, so now we're going to put the A in the bass. Again, we follow all the normal rules. We're allowed to have 2 Ds or 2 As. I'm going to keep the 2 Ds, okay? There's the D. I'm going to put the F here, and I'm going to put the D there. See, 2 Ds, 1 F, 1 A. So let me play those chords for you again. Here is the chord in root position. There you can hear the bass. This is in first inversion. And here is in second inversion. In each case, the bass has a. Okay? Is everybody online okay with us? You're all with us?
Yes, sir.
Sifundo? You okay? Mfundo?
Yes,
Not Nomfundo, just Mfundo, sorry. Okay, so everybody's okay with this. I noticed that some of you, when you were writing the triads, when they were in these inversions, you simply wrote the triad like this instead of starting the triad for first inversion on that note and starting the triad on this note for second inversion. So it's quite important that you know exactly what you are doing over here. Okay, that the bass note must be different in each case. Now that was a primary triad. Let's have a look at a secondary triad, and we'll do the same thing here. Okay, this time we'll look at chord 2. Chord 2 is a primary triad, as a secondary triad. We'll do chord 2 in root position, in first inversion, and its second inversion. All right. So here's chord 2 over here. It's a secondary chord. So which note are we allowed to double? The third. So that note is the one that we're allowed to double, the G. Okay. So let's have a look. In root position, the root note has to be at the bottom. That's an E. So I'm going to write an E. Okay. Now we need 2 G's and a B. So we've got the E, that's done. So we don't need any more E's. Let's put a G over there in the tenor. So we've got 1 G, we need another G. Let's put one in the soprano voice. We've got both G's. Now we need a B. There. Okay. 1 E, 2 G's, 1 B. Okay. Now, 2, 6. Which note has to be at the bottom this time? Yeah. And what note is the third? G. So we have to have a G at the bottom. So there's the G. Okay. Now we need to have 2 G's. So we'll come to that just now. I'm going to put a B here. I'm going to put an E here. I'm going to put a G there. 2 G's, they're the 2 G's. 1 E, 1 B. Okay. And they're all in a line. Now, 2, 6, 4. Which note has to be at the top, at the bottom in the bass voice now? Yes, which is what note is this? B. Okay. So let's put the B at the bottom now. I'm going to put it lower on the stage, just so that we've got more space. Okay, so I'm putting it down here. But you could write it up here, it doesn't really matter. Okay. B. Now we need an E and 2 G's. So let's put one of the G's over here, one of the G's over there, and one of the B over there. 1 B, 2 G's, 1 E. Let's listen to what they sound like. All right, so here's the first one. Oh, sorry. There's the first one. No, that was the first one. There's the bass. Second one. And the third one. Okay. So they each have a slightly different sound. That's why the inversions are so important. Root, first, second. Okay. If I wrote, let me just do this so you can see it. If I wrote the B up here, E, and let's put the E over here, G up here. Now you can see it's going up successively. Do you see this? 1, 2, 3. All right. Do you notice that when a soprano and an alto sing the same note, they can sing the same note. You put a tail going down and a tail going up for the same note. You could do the same for tenors and basses. Okay. All right. So those are the primary and secondary triads and how we use them in different inversions. Any questions so far? Weren't you online just now? Okay. You decided to come into the class instead. Okay. Here is some manuscript paper. All right, now we come to the more exciting part. So you will have to write out chords in 4 parts like this for your assessment. But you will also have to write what is called a cadence. Cadence, okay? Cadences come at the end of a phrase of music. They're 2 chords that work well together. Okay, here is an example of a cadence. Okay. They work nicely together. Or this one. Okay. Or you can this. Okay. Or so we've got 4 different types of cadences. And I'll write them down for you so that you can see what they are. The first type of cadence is a perfect cadence. And that is when we do chord 5 to chord 1. Chord 5 to chord 1. We'll write that down just now so you can see how it goes. All right? Then we have a plagal. A plagal cadence. That is when you've got chord 4 to chord 1. Then we get something called imperfect. And the first chord can be 1 or 2 or 4 going to 5. So it would be one of these chords, not all 3 of them. You have either 1 going to 5 or 2 going to 5 or 4 going to 5. Okay? And the last one is interrupt. That's when you've got chord 5 going to chord 6. Okay. Now I'm going to write out each of these and how they work and how you would work them out over here. Let's start with the perfect cadence. Okay. So we go through the same thing. We'll use the same key, D flat. We write out the key signature and we write all of the chords. Then we write out the bass and the treble clef. We write the line going down that joins them together. And we write the key signature in plus D flat dot dot. Then we write here 5 to 1. And we put a bar up. Now, for the moment in cadences, you're only going to use the chords in root position, which is helpful, okay? So you don't need to worry about inversions for this one. Let's start by writing out chord 5. Here's chord 5. Is chord 5 primary or secondary? Primary, okay? Chord 5 is primary, so which notes are you allowed to double? The bottom one or the top one? This one or this one, okay? And it's in root position, so we're going to use this note as the bass note, okay? So I write, let's use, there's the A, okay? There's the A over there. And I'm going to use 2 A's. I'm allowed to use 2 A's or 2 E's. I'm going to use 2 A's. And I'll put the other A over here. 2 A's. Now I need a C and an E. So I can do this. There's the E in the alto and the C. I want you to see that the distance between these 2 voices, A to E, is not very big. Okay? A, B, C, D, E. It's a 5th. All right? And the distance between the soprano and the alto is E, F, G, A, B, C. It's a 6th. Okay? That's fine. You're allowed to have anything under an octave between the voices. Okay? Except between the tenor and the bass, they're allowed to be an octave or bigger. All right, so there's chord 5, 2 A's, 1 C, 1 E. Once you've written this first chord, the next important thing is to look at the next chord, which is 1. The bass note for chord 1, well, let's first see, is it a primary or a secondary chord? Primary, okay, and which notes are we allowed to double? Root or the 5th, okay. And it's in root position, there's no 6 or 6/4, so this is going to be the bass, the D, okay? So we write D. Okay. This time around, I'm also going to double the root. I'm going to have 2 Ds. But I'm going to put, you see over here, when I double the 2, I put them bass and tenor. Okay? I'm not allowed to do that. Now I've got two Ds there. I can't have 2 A's here and 2 D's there. I'm not allowed to do that, okay, in this system. So we'll have to put the other D somewhere else. And here's the rule that you should try and follow. When you are doing one chord to the next, you try and either keep the voice part on its same note, or it must just move by steps up or down. So which note over here of these 3 notes, which note is closest to a D? We've got A, we've got E, and we've got C. Which note is close to D? C. Yes. So let's go up to the D. It's just one step. Do you see that? Okay. Then we've got our 2 Ds. We need an F and we need an A. Let's start with the F. Which of these notes is closest to F? E or A? E. So let's make it go to F. Okay. And then we need an A. Here's an A, so it can just stay on A. Okay. Listen to what this sounds like. Sorry. There's chord 5, going to chord 1. Okay, you see how I did it? Any questions so far? Right, let's try the plagal cadence now. Can I wrap this off? We're going to use the same sort of rules now, okay? So we need, first we write out the chords, 4, going to 1. Okay, here's chord 4. Is chord 4 primary or secondary? Primary. So which notes are we allowed to double? The bottom or the top? Right. Is this in root position, first inversion, or second inversion? Root position. So we have to use that note, the G. Right? Let's put G. Okay. All right. Now let's see. This time I'm going to double the top note, the 5th. Okay. So I'm going to put a D here. And a B. And I need another D. So I've got G, E, and 2 Ds. Okay. G, B, 2 Ds. All right, now let's look at chord 1. Here's chord 1. Is it primary or secondary? Primary. Okay, so we can either double the root or the 5th. And this time I'll double the root. Okay. Is it in first inversion, second inversion, or root position? Root position, so we need to have a D at the bottom. D. All right. And I'm going to double the D. So which of these notes here is closest to D? We've got D, D, or B. Let's keep the D in the tenor voice, okay? There. Okay. We've got our 2 Ds. Let's look at the A. Which of these notes is closest to A? D or B? Which B? Yes. So we can go B to A. All right? And then we've got one note left, F. This is D. It's close to F. It's close enough to F, so we can make it go up to F. Okay. Let's listen to it. So here's chord 4, and here's chord 1. Okay, there we go. Do you see how easy it is? It's not very difficult. Let's do an imperfect cadence this time. I'm going to go chord 2 to chord 5. 2 to chord 5. Let's start with chord 2. Is 2 a primary triad or a secondary triad? Secondary triad. So which note are we allowed to double? The third. Okay, there we go. And is it in root position, first inversion, or second inversion? Root. So we need to have an E at the bottom. Let's put the E over here. E. We are going to have 2 Gs. So let's put one of the Gs in the tenor and one in the soprano. And then we need a B. There we go. E, G, there's the other G, B. We've got the right bass note and we've doubled the right notes. Okay. Now we go to chord 5. There's chord 5. Is it primary or secondary? Primary. Okay. So which notes are we allowed to double? Bottom or the top? 2 A's or 2 E's? Let's have 2 A's. I'm going to make the bass note go down to an A there. And I'm going to make the G go to an A. All right. Then we need a C and an E. Let's put the C over here and E over here. 2 A's, C, E. Do you see this one goes up by a step? This one goes up by a step from B to C, and this one just comes down by a third. So everything is good. Okay? The only voice that is allowed to jump is the bass voice. Okay? It has to, because if we're going to have these chords in root position, you can't get them close to each other. Okay? So here is what it sounds like. Chord 2 to 5. There's chord 2 to 5. Okay? All right. So far, so good. Let's do the last one, the interrupted cadence. All right, interrupted is chord 5 to chord 6. All right, chord 5, we already know, is a primary triad. So we're allowed to have 2 A's or 2 E's. I'm going to give it 2 A's, a C, and actually let me do it like this. Okay, so there are the 2 A's, A, there's the C, there's the E. You notice that between here, A to E, A, B, C, D, E, it's a fifth, so we're fine. Okay, and between these two, E, F, G, A, B, C, it's a sixth, so we're fine. Okay, now we're going to chord 6. Is chord 6 primary or secondary? Secondary, yes. So which note are we allowed to double? The third. 2 D's, okay? And in which inversion is it? Root, first inversion, root, okay? So we need to have a B at the bottom. So let's put this B over here. We've got the B done. Now we need 2 D's. Let's see. There's an E. An E can go to a D. So let's go to a D. C is also close to a D. So we write a D. Right now we just need an F. Okay. We've got the D, we've got the, the B, we've got the two Ds, now we need an F. And this one is close to F. So we just write the F there. Okay, now listen to what that sounds like. Chord 5 and 2, chord 6. Quite an interesting one, that's why it's called interrupted. Sounds like you're asking a musical question because it's unfinished. Okay. Any questions so far? Also from online, if you have any questions. Now we have to practice them. Okay. So I'm going to give some examples for you here that I want you to write out. And I'm going to give you 2 cadences to write out. And I want you to write those out and I'll come and have a look at them. And then that's all that we are going to do today, okay? So, we'll stay in D flat. And I'd like you to write these chords out for me, please. All right, so here are your 3 chords that I'd like you to write out in 4 parts. Chord 3-6, 1-6-4, and 6-6. Then I'd like you to do a perfect cadence and a plagal cadence. But you aren't allowed to copy exactly what I did, okay? So I know you've written those things down. That's not fair. Use the same chords, but distribute the notes differently, okay? All right, so start working on that. I'm going to stop recording here now, but those of you who are online, please can you also do that for me and then send it to me as a WhatsApp. Take a picture of it and send it to me as a WhatsApp and I'll mark it later today for you.